Tonight, as Donald Trump prepares to officially accept the Republican presidential nomination, Joe Biden leaves the campaign trail with COVID. The latest on the 2024 race for the White House. And
there was local police in the area that were responsible for the outer perimeter of the building.
Growing calls for greater accountability for the Secret Service after the assassination attempt on former President Trump. Plus,
because of the Hezbollah, the terror organization, now attacking Israel, it's impossible to live up north.
How waves of rocket fire from Hezbollah are driving Israelis from their homes. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. Donald Trump expected to officially accept his party's nomination on the fourth and final night of the Republican National Convention. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Faith Nation from CBN's headquarters in Virginia Beach. I'm Wendy Griffith. It's a comeback 4 years in the making. Tonight, Trump will take center stage to speak as the Republican Party's presidential nominee. Surrounded by loyal supporters and former rivals, he'll make the case for a potential return to the White House. It's the former president's first major address since surviving an assassination attempt less than a week ago.
I expect former President Trump to talk about unity, but we're also going to get the same Trump that we've had for many years. He's not going to be able to resist contrasting himself with the current president and the current vice president. So we're going to see a lot of the red meat that we've seen from him.
Meanwhile, President Joe Biden isolating at his home in Delaware with COVID. This amid rising pressure from Democrats to end his campaign and pass on the torch. Publicly, Biden has shown no signs of dropping out of the race, but Axios reports the president could decide to step aside as early as the weekend. Well, on Wednesday at the RNC, former never-Trumper J.D. Vance showed he's staunchly behind the GOP presidential nominee. In his speech, the vice presidential pick shared the personal story of his rise from poverty. Vance also highlighted his conservative credentials and offered a fresh vision for the party's future. John Jessup has the story.
After a parade of familiar faces, some from Trump's first administration.
Good evening, Patriots.
Others representing everyday Americans, the main event featured a debut performance of sorts.
I'm overwhelmed with gratitude to say I officially accept your nomination to be Vice President of the United States of America.
James David Vance, known by his initials JD, first paying homage to the resilience of former President Donald Trump, looking on from the stands at his election for VP.
He can stand defiant against an assassin one moment and call for national healing the next.
Playing up his Rust Belt roots, the Ohio native shined a light on the plight of his hometown and other cities he described as devastated by the effects of globalization.
I promise you this, I will be a vice president who never forgets where he came from.
A night leaning heavy on military service and sacrifice, Vance acknowledged his tour in Iraq as a Marine combat journalist.
Semper Fi to my fellow Marines.
Throughout the speech, he drilled down on the night's theme of American strength at home and abroad, targeting trade deals benefiting countries like China and Mexico, while also putting America's military allies on notice.
We will make sure our allies share in the burden of securing world peace.
I am grateful to all of you for the trust you have placed in him and in our family.
Briefly sharing the stage with his wife Usha, a fellow Yale Law School grad, she helped to portray his softer side as a husband and a father of 3. And he also received a resounding endorsement from the Trump family.
A kid from Appalachia and a kid from Trump Tower in Manhattan. We grew up worlds apart. Yet now, we're both fighting side by side to save the country we love.
Trump's campaign sees Vance reaching a younger audience and potentially drawing support from Silicon Valley, along with money from big tech donors. Still, one political observer from Vance's home state telling me on CBN's Faith Nation the freshman senator will have to thread the needle on differences with his running mate on taxes, a harder line on abortion, and a seemingly more labor-friendly approach.
His very strong populist streak over the last several years, where he says things like he has more in common economically with the Bernie Sanders kind of voters than other people, I think that's going to create some red flags out of parts of the Republican coalition.
But Wednesday's crowd in Milwaukee clearly approving of Trump's election. Vance fulfilled his twofold role, introducing himself to a national audience and setting the stage for tonight when Donald Trump, less than a week after his assassination attempt, accepts the Republican nomination for president and makes the case for a possible return to the White House. John Jessup, CBN News, Washington.
Thanks, John. We failed a no-fail mission. That's the latest from the Secret Service director who briefed lawmakers Wednesday regarding the assassination attempt on former President Trump. Meanwhile, as the investigation continues, experts tell CBN News our very way of government is on the line. National security correspondent Caitlin Burke has the latest. Caitlin.
Wendy, Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle has acknowledged mistakes and gaps in the protection at Saturday's Pennsylvania rally, but so far has provided no answers into where the breakdown occurred.
This was an assassination attempt. You owe the people answers. You owe President Trump answers.
As lawmakers call for Cheadle's resignation, the FBI providing a clearer picture of events leading up to the shooting. According to lawmakers briefed by federal investigators, a report identifying Thomas Matthew Crooks as a person of interest came 62 minutes before he fired the first shot. And Secret Service reportedly got word of Crooks as being on the roof 20 minutes before the shooting started.
It was a fail. And we need to start there, because no matter what else is explained, the President of the United States was shot on a Secret Service site.
Former Secret Service agent Tim Miller tells CBN News he believes the breakdown began with the advance team.
That's the most important piece, because you're preparing the site foot by foot, building by building, for the arrival of the protectee and what we call their detail.
Local law enforcement, meanwhile, defending their actions, saying they warned the Secret Service they would not be able to provide enough police personnel to cover all buildings outside the secure perimeter.
The deputies under my control did their job and went above and beyond.
Let me be clear. The U.S. Secret Service owns 100% responsibility for what occurred last Saturday. We have law enforcement partners all over, really, the world that we team with, but it is the Secret Service's responsibility to make sure that site is safe, and that didn't happen.
The Secret Service, Congress, and even Homeland Security have all ordered independent reviews. Miller adds it's never been more important for law enforcement to look ahead for the next threat.
If candidates can't come together with their supporters, present their ideas, get everybody excited to go to the booth and vote for them, if they can't do that because they're being murdered, welcome to Mexico.
Director Cheadle has agreed to appear Monday on Capitol Hill, but has already said she has no intention of stepping down. Miller says the time for excuses is over and to move toward humility, accountability, and answers that will give the American people confidence going forward in this election season. Wendy?
Would sure be nice. Thank you so much, Caitlin. Well, turning now to Israel's war against Hamas. Israel will begin drafting ultra-Orthodox men this Sunday after the Supreme Court ended their long-standing exemption from military service. The news comes as Israel continues to pound targets in central and southern Gaza. Israel's parliament also enacted a new resolution formally opposing a Palestinian state, declaring it would pose an existential threat to Israel. The vote comes just days before Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's visit to Washington for an address to Congress. While the IDF fights Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah has fired barrages of rockets at Israel almost every day since October 7th. The attacks are taking a huge toll on the people, the environment, and the economy. CBN's Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell reports from northern Israel.
Since the almost daily barrage began, life here is a dangerous and potentially deadly place. Noah and Ner Baranes died in a rocket attack July 9th, leaving behind 3 children. They're among dozens of civilians and soldiers killed by Hezbollah. Now, most communities along the Lebanese border stand nearly empty. Another casualty is the land itself, due to wildfires created by the combination of rocket fire and dry summer conditions throughout northern Israel, the Galilee, and the Golan Heights. The fires started by Hezbollah rockets have destroyed tens of thousands of acres and thousands of trees, some planted as far back as 60 years ago. These are the worst forest fires in the history of Israel. Itamar Katz leads forestry efforts on the Golan Heights.
I'm kind of young and I'm new in the system. I've only been in the Forest Service for 7 years. But all of the older generation, I mean, I see them, their whole life's work is going up in flames, and it's on purpose. I mean, somebody's doing this on purpose to us. It's not just happening.
This intentional destruction, reaching nearly 40,000 acres thus far, is just another part of Hezbollah's goal to drain Israel's resources, wear down its people, and eventually eliminate the Jewish state.
I mean, for us, it's huge. I mean, these fires here are equivalent to the fires in Northern California for us. That's how we experience it. Although it might be like a 1,000 or 2,000 hectare fire, which, I mean, it's big in any scale, but in Israel, it's huge.
And it's also destroying regional wildlife.
When fires starts in the spring, in the late spring, in the midst of the nesting season, then there's a real damage to birds. We're talking about chicks and nests that cannot fly. The parents are leaving, but the chicks are burning to their death, and the birds are losing a whole generation.
I feel like a refugee in my own country, and it's not a good position to be at.
Miriam Armon is among the tens of thousands of Israelis now living away from home. Before October 7th, her family had lived in the border community of Metula for 5 generations.
The Hezbollah started the missiles, launching missiles toward Metula. Many, many houses got hit, mine included. But because of the Hezbollah, the terror organization, now attacking Israel, it's impossible to live up north. The thing that is important that not many people knows about it, not many people understand the situation, that we just want to live in peace.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Northern Israel.
Thank you so much, Chris. Coming up, the latest figures on the economy and what that means for your wallet when Faith Nation returns. Turning tonight to the economy, more Americans are applying for new jobless benefits. According to a Labor Department report out today, unemployment claims are on the rise, now reaching 243,000. That's up about 20,000 from the previous week. It marks the highest weekly report since a matching report back in June. Both of those the highest weekly claims in nearly a year. E.J. Antony is a research fellow in the Center for Data Analysis at the Heritage Foundation. E.J., welcome to Faith Nation. We see these rises and dips in new unemployment claims each week, but overall, how is the job market in America?
Well, I think one of the things that's really important to point out with this latest report is that most of the increase came from the state of Texas, which was disproportionately impacted by a hurricane that just blew through. And so a lot of that increase we suspect is simply going to go away in the coming weeks. However, that doesn't mean that everything in the job market is sunshine and rainbows here. You know, this economy has been hemorrhaging full-time jobs and replacing them with part-time ones. A lot of Americans are having a hard time getting work. All of our jobs are going to foreign workers, not native-born Americans, and people's wages still have not caught up to inflation. So it really is the case that people are having a tough time out there.
Yeah, really interesting about Texas. I'm glad you brought that up. And you recently posted on X that the Treasury just borrowed $29 billion, driving federal debt to a new record high. What do you make of that growing number?
Well, if people are wondering, why is the interest rate on my credit card so high? Why is my mortgage rate so high? I don't care if it's auto loans, student loans, you name it. It is incredibly expensive to borrow money today. And the reason for that is because the Treasury is borrowing so much money. As you said, tens of billions of dollars at a time. And the consequence of that is interest rates have been driven up, again, on all types of consumer debt. And as a consequence of that, the cost of living is going up as well. You know, the monthly mortgage payment on a median price home has more than doubled under the Biden administration, and those higher interest rates are a key reason why.
You know, last week we reported inflation doing a little bit better. Gas prices, I believe, were down. Food still a little high. Any new developments in terms of inflation and how that's doing?
Well, unfortunately, the pace that, or I should say, the slowdown in inflation that we've had does not look like it's going to last. You know, the same government spending that is causing all of this borrowing and the higher interest rates is also causing the higher inflation. And so while the temporary slowdown is certainly welcomed relief for consumers, I don't want to downplay that. The problem is that unless we can get the government spending under control, it probably is just going to be that temporary relief.
And lastly, you know, we mentioned the rise in the federal debt. How can the U.S. rein that in?
Oh, we just have to cut the spending, pure and simple. You know, all these calls for higher tax rates are missing the bigger picture, which is that the tax revenue coming in right now is essentially at a record high. And even when you impose very high tax rates, that doesn't mean you get more tax revenue. So as a percentage of the economy, the amount of tax revenue we're getting is really the most the economy can deliver. So we don't have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem. And we need to address that by going after all parts of the budget.
EJ, thanks so much for your time. We always appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Well, up next, a new Museum of the Bible exhibit puts the beauty of creation on full display. Welcome back. It's a worship experience unlike any other. The latest in light detection, 3D laser technology, and Christian music melding together in the exhibit titled All Creation Sings. I recently went to the Museum of the Bible to experience this dynamic sight and sound spectacular. Take a look. Welcome to the Museum of the Bible's latest feature, All Creation Sings, inspired by Psalm 148, which declares, "Let them praise the name of the Lord." It's a 45-minute experience posing the question, what is worship?
When somebody says worship to me, my mind immediately goes to the thing that we do at church on Sundays before the pastor gets up and gives the sermon. And indeed, that is worship. But as the Bible talks about worship, it's so much more than that. So the story is the story of the Bible, and it's taking you from creation or Genesis all the way to Revelation.
Using the latest light detection and 3D laser technology, you can literally interact with the walls.
Suddenly, I'm a little kid again, and I could go and create and paint on the walls at the beginning and at the end of this story.
The Museum of the Bible teamed up with a group called Creator to feature some of Christian music's biggest names for this project.
Jackie Hill Perry and Tasha Cobbs Leonard and Brandon Lake, Carrie Job, Cody Carnes, Phil Wickham, Brooke Liggertwood, Chris Tomlin. It is the who's who that have come together to create this organization called Creator, lending their voice to this before you go into the experience, really setting up the experience so that your heart and your mind is prepared to talk about worship and what it is and who deems it worthy.
All Creation Sings is not so much an exhibit as an experience. It takes guests on a journey through 4 acts, immersing them in a worship adventure that can only be described as heavenly.
Mother and daughter, Madison and Laura DeMichael from Ohio, were enthralled.
To see the Word of God come alive in front of me and just to be a part of that cacophony of praise, like they said in the beginning, it is a continual praise that is echoing to our Lord and our Savior beyond a shadow of a doubt. It was an experience by far.
It was incredible. I've never seen anything like it. Like all the colors, all of the sounds.
This has got to be a little foretaste of what heaven's like.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Sure. To just be a part of it, to hear it surrounding you.
It makes me excited to see what heaven will be like.
Yeah.
I'm super excited.
But not yet.
Not yet.
6th graders from Our Lady of Victory School in Washington, D.C. appeared captivated by the experience.
I thought it was really cool how it was interactive. I've been to an interactive thing like that before, but not all around and like with the screens and the projectors and everything. It was amazing.
I think it was amazing and it was kind of out of this world. I thought it was going to be like virtual reality, so this was pretty cool and it was kind of like that.
What was your favorite part?
My favorite part was probably the running around and touching the walls.
It was so awesome. Like, there was all the colors and all the lights and the sounds. It was one of the most amazing things I've been to so far in my life.
I thought it was fantastic, actually. There was like all these colors and like the animation, and I just really loved it.
For their teacher, Jenna Drummond, it helped bring the Old Testament story she's been teaching her students to life.
Going back to what we've been talking about all year, I teach religion for 6th grade, which is Old Testament. So the creation story, how we continue that in our daily lives, and how we continue to pay that forward in DC.
And for the Bible Museum, it's a way to focus guests on our original purpose as children of God.
Worship is our purpose. That's what we're created for, right? So God created us, and He created our universe to see the greatness of our creation, the greatness of God's design in our existence. It takes you to kind of a humble, really reflective place, right? And I think that's always a good starting point to kind of find your space in the context of our existence of this world. And I think that's specifically attractive for people who don't have a faith background, right? Because it kind of gives them a new North Star, kind of to understand, so what on earth am I here for?
Wendy Griffith, CBN News, Washington. Weren't those kids cute? Well, coming up, a hard act to follow at Milwaukee's Republican National Convention. Next on Faith Nation. Finally tonight, a West Virginia state celebrity made a cameo at the Republican National Convention. On Tuesday, West Virginia Governor and U.S. Senate candidate Jim Justice had the speaking slot, but it was his dog, Baby Dog, who stole the show. The 60-pound English bulldog sat in a chair next to the governor, who claimed Baby Dog predicted the outcome of November's general election. Of course, Trump wins that. He also said that his pet loves everybody, a simple message he hoped made the crowd smile. And I had the pleasure of meeting Baby Dog when I interviewed the governor in April. She is so cute. Well, that's going to do it for Faith Nation. We'll see you tomorrow.